Maplewood was a town where secrets whispered through the wind. Quaint houses lined the streets, their porches adorned with rocking chairs and hanging ferns. The scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbour's name, where children rode bikes freely, and where the biggest news was Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning blueberry pie at the annual bake-off. At the heart of this idyllic town stood the Maplewood Public Library, a grand Victorian building with ivy crawling up its brick facade. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and silence, presided over by Sarah, the town librarian. Sarah was a fixture in Maplewood, a woman with a warm smile and a gentle demeanour. Her silver hair was always pulled back in a neat bun, and her spectacles perched precariously on the bridge of her nose. She knew every book in the library by heart, and could often be found helping patrons navigate the towering shelves. Sarah had a knack for remembering names and faces, and she always had a kind word or a listening ear for those who needed it. She was, in many ways, the embodiment of Maplewood itself, kind, quiet, and unassuming. Beneath the surface, however, a darkness lurked within Sarah. She harboured a secret, one that she guarded fiercely. It was a secret that had stained her soul, a secret that she hid behind her gentle smile and her kind eyes. For Sarah was not the harmless old woman she appeared to be. She was a master manipulator, a weaver of deceit, and a cold-blooded killer. Maplewood had always been a town of routine. The days unfolded like the pages of a well-worn book, predictable and familiar. But lately, a sense of unease had settled over the town like a shroud. People had started to disappear. It began subtly at first, a whisper of a missing person here, a hushed conversation about an unexplained absence there. But as the weeks turned into months, the disappearances became impossible to ignore. The missing were a motley crew, with little in common except for one chilling detail. They had all crossed paths with Sarah in some way. There was Mrs. Peterson, the nosy neighbour who had a habit of peering over Sarah's fence, never realising that her curiosity would be her undoing. And then there was Mr. Henderson, the grumpy old man who always complained about the library being too noisy. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a trail of unanswered questions. The disappearances baffled the small-town police force. They were ill-equipped to handle such cases, their resources stretched thin, and their experience limited to dealing with petty thefts and the occasional drunk and disorderly. The townsfolk, once complacent in their idyllic bubble, began to eye each other with suspicion. Fear, like a venomous serpent, slithered its way into the heart of Maplewood, poisoning the once peaceful community. Mark was a young journalist, new to Maplewood. He had come to the town seeking a fresh start, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. He had taken a job at the local newspaper, the Maplewood Gazette, eager to chronicle the lives and stories of the town's inhabitants. Mark was a curious soul, drawn to the unusual and the unexplained. He had an unyielding thirst for truth and a knack for uncovering secrets. When the disappearances began to plague Maplewood, Mark's journalistic instincts kicked in. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to these cases than met the eye. He began his investigation by poring over old newspapers, searching for any mention of similar disappearances in Maplewood's past. He spent hours at the police station, reviewing case files and interviewing officers. The more he dug, the more he became convinced that these were not random acts. There was a pattern here, a connection that eluded the police. And at the centre of it all, like a spider patiently weaving her web, was Sarah, the unassuming librarian. Mark had met Sarah shortly after moving to Maplewood. He had found her to be a charming and helpful woman, eager to share her knowledge of the town and its history. He had even interviewed her for a piece he was writing about the library's upcoming centennial celebration. But now, as he delved deeper into the disappearances, a chill ran down his spine. There was something off about Sarah, something in her eyes that sent shivers down his spine. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, tucked inside a book about Victorian poisons that Mark had borrowed from the library. It was written in Sarah's elegant cursive, the words flowing effortlessly across the thick, creamy paper. "Dear Mark," it read, "I do hope you're enjoying the book. It's one of my favourites. I was wondering if you might be free for tea one afternoon this week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the book. and I'm always happy to chat about all things Maplewood." The note was signed with a flourish. "Yours sincerely, Sarah." Mark stared at the invitation, his gut churning with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. He had been keeping his suspicions about Sarah to himself, knowing that he had no concrete evidence to back them up. But now this invitation felt like a trap, a spider inviting a fly into its parlor. He knew he should decline, that it was too risky to accept, but the journalist in him, the part of him that craved the truth no matter the cost, couldn't resist the lure of the unknown. Mark convinced himself that he was being paranoid. Sarah was just an old woman, a harmless librarian. What possible threat could she pose? He decided to accept her invitation, but not without taking precautions. He would tell his editor where he was going, and he would make sure to leave his phone's GPS tracker on. He would be careful, he told himself, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking straight into the lion's den.